because a room without art is a room without life. Bachner Gallery, 10201 University in West Des Moines, Iowa's #1 art source.
This is CNN.
Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, limousines, private jets, cozy retreat, helicopters. Are the president's creature comforts too much for taxpayers? Some in Congress take aim. Plus, the war hero who's joined H. Ross Perot's assault on the White House, Admiral James Stockdale. Now, sitting in for Larry King, here's Bob Beckel.
Good evening, I'm Bob Beckel. That small arms fire you hear at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue is the sound of politicians bravely killing off each other's perks. You know, perks, goodies, extras. The flood of freebies Washington took for granted until the rest of the world saw red. It started in Congress. Bad checks at the House bank, a cut-rate gym, and torn-up parking tickets. All gone now, symbols of bad excess. But some in Congress think life in the White House looks even more plush. Air Force One, Camp David, staff cars by the dozens, perks most congressmen only dream about. They held a hearing today on White House perks, but nobody from the White House showed up. A fact Democrats took pains to emphasize. Maybe they're just trying to spread around the blame, but the question's a fair one. Does the president need all that stuff? Joining me in Washington, former Senator William Proxmire of Wisconsin, a longtime opponent of government waste, and General Alexander Haag, White House Chief of Staff under President Nixon and President Reagan's first Secretary of State. Senator, the Republicans up there said that the Democrats were trying to divert attention from their own real scandals on Capitol Hill. Fair comment, fair allegation?
Fair comment, fair allegation. Both have perks that are excessive, wrong, at a time when the country is in terrible debt, the worst debt we've ever been in. My gosh, we've gone in only 12 years. We've gone from $900 billion debt to almost $4 trillion. Now, this is a time when we should be saving money everywhere we can. There's a small amount of money, but the symbols are enormously important. If the president doesn't save money, if the Congress wastes money, then the example to the rest of the bureaucracy is so bad that we're in real trouble.
Okay, Al Haag, I saw something today. The president has something like 90 butlers, maids, florists, 4 calligraphers, 1,200 aircraft at the beck and call of the executive branch of government. Do you think that's maybe a little excessive?
Well, I don't know. I do know this, that it's the Congress that appropriates the money every year, and these things are reviewed in both the House and the Senate in the appropriations committees. Now, there's no question that we have to be very, very careful about perks and excessive spending at a time like this in our nation's history with a $400 billion deficit this year. On the other hand, this is not the problem. The problem really emerged from the abuse of perks on the Hill. And now the Speaker and the House members on the Democratic side are trying to cast stones at the White House. The real problem is that most of these so-called perks evolved over many years as a result of efforts to make life for executives more effective and more efficient. Doesn't mean that abuses don't creep in. We've seen that on the Hill, and we've got to be alert about it, and we've got to correct it.
Bill Proxmire, for years, you were famous for handing out the Golden Fleece Awards about these very perks. And yet, why did it take hold now, do you think, as opposed to over all those years you raised it? Is there something different in America today?
Well, I think a lot of people didn't really realize how serious these perks are, how comprehensive they are. How many people, for instance, realize that the average member of the House and Senate, put all members of Congress together, and it costs the American people $3.5 million for each one a year because they have such enormous staffs that they don't need. Well, we turned back half of our clerk hire money. When I was in the Senate, we had 1,000 letters a day. We were able to answer them all and turn it back. Just a terrific waste. There's no excuse for paying $129,500 to every single member of Congress and $135,000 to every member of the cabinet and $200,000 to the president when they're doing such a very, very poor job. Well, now, you know, if a business were running this way, terribly in debt, more in debt than ever, enormous interest burden that our children and grandchildren are going to have to carry throughout their lifetime. We throw them out.
Well, you never know. That may happen this election. Al, when you were Secretary of State and Chief of Staff, I mean, it's understandable. You had planes and you had to move around. You had a busy schedule. How do you answer, though, the question, why does the current Chief of Staff's deputy need to be picked up at his house every morning by a chauffeured limousine and taken to the White House? Is this guy that important?
Well, I would hope so. Let me tell you, as a Deputy National Security Advisor, I was gone 7 days a week, 16 to 18 hours a day, was called into the White House at midnight. We were on a global clock. The President's on a global clock. That's 24 hours a day. And I think we've got to be very careful about this silly season that we're in, and it has something to do with an election in November. And the great disconcertion of the American people at this time because of understandable frustrations. And what we want to do is not throw the baby out with the bathwater and be sure that what we do is prudent and makes good sense.
Go ahead.
Let me take an example here. The President has a $180 million plane, Air Force One. He doesn't need it. We have wonderful commercial travel. He could travel anywhere in the world safely in a commercial plane. Everybody else has to do that. He ought to do that, believe me, and he ought to travel coach. We'd have, the people would then admire the President if he did that. He really doesn't need that.
Bill Proxmire, are you serious? You want the President of the United States to fly coach around the world?
I sure do. You bet your life. It'd be great to look across the aisle and see George Bush there.
Well, I bet you'd be a lot of surprise passengers. Well, let me go back to this point, though, Al. Even if you can't agree with that,
I have real trouble agreeing with that.
No, I understand it. But listen, when you talked about being Deputy National Security Advisor, I know a little bit about what that is. That's a very important, critical job. It is time sensitive. You've got lots of important crisis situations that develop. But why, for example, does the Congressional Relations staff at the White House, or some undersecretary, or some minor cabinet position, I mean, that's what gets people upset. There is a distinction between what you did and what some undersecretary of coal or something.
Look, I'm not going to defend the undersecretary of coal because I don't know him, but let me tell you this. These fellows up on the Hill who are yelling and screaming are the very fellows who every day demand the appearance of this secretary, this cabinet officer to appear before one committee or another, drive them absolutely out of their gourds, keep them from doing the job they should be doing, and keep them waiting in the hallways up there on the Hill. Now, there is reform that is necessary, but I think our public officials in high positions should be able to move effectively and efficiently to conduct the business of the American people. Now, where it doesn't do that, let's get rid of it, but let's not go into an orgy which isn't addressing the real problems that are creating the frustrations that are bothering America, our deficit, and a host of other problems.
Very quickly, Bill, go ahead.
Think how ridiculous it is to have 96 servants serving the President. You know, butlers, housemaids, waiters. It's obscene to have that. There's no wealthy family in the country that has more than 5, 6, 7 servants. What do you do with all of them? You only have 2 people in the White House to take care of, and they have 96 servants? It's rather ridiculous.
Okay, I'm going to have to do my business on this show. We're going to take a break and come back with more talk of perks under fire in the nation's capital. I'm Bob Beckel. Don't go away.
It's only natural that children look to their parents for answers. So to help you explain why some things that may be fine for adults aren't right for children, Anheuser-Busch offers Family Talk, free advice from professionals to use with your kids while they're still learning to be grown up. And their favorite teacher is you. Let's stop underage drinking before it starts.
All across the USA, a great deals on the road. I go Mojo.
Right now, take advantage of our special sale rates, and you can win a great new Geo tractor or over 1,000 other prizes. And on your second stay, pick up a free sports pack.
When the sun goes down at the end of every day, America turns to orange. Howard Johnson today. Howard Johnson today.
GMC truck, our only business is trucks, and has been for over 80 years. A dedication to truck strengths and values to keep in mind. Because when you need to haul something, tow something, carry precious cargo, find new trails, or simply ride high and proud, there's nothing quite as strong as a truck. GMC truck, the strength of experience.
When you want to watch the news, you turn to CNN, but did you know we're much more?
Like coverage of the world's financial markets.
Style, decoration, design, and beauty.
All the sports, scores, and highlights.
Debate from a different perspective.
Talk that'll thrill you.
Showbiz, from Hollywood to Broadway.
Tantalizing cuisine.
Advice you can count on.
The world's weather. The pros and the cons.
CNN, we're the news you need and much more.
Welcome back. We're back here now discussing the assault on perks that's sweeping Washington with former Senator William Proxmire and General Al Haag, who's held high posts in more than one Republican administration. General, why now? I mean, if you think about this, these abuses have been around a long time. Call them perks, call them abuses, call them what you will. But it seems that somehow in this year, at this moment, between the House issue and now the White House perks, the American public is furious. Why?
Well, the American economy is in trouble. The American people are suffering. The American people are going to be intolerant of public officials whose salaries they pay, who abuse the privileges that they enjoy. And this is very understandable, and I am very sympathetic with that as a taxpayer. On the other hand, I think we have to be careful also not to be batting at gnats in this silly season that I talked about, and get to the true issues, which are the cause of the problems that are causing suffering in America. Our deficit and a host of other related problems, which must be dealt with by our legislators, by the executive branch, in the interest of the American people. And that's where I'm appalled, and that's why we are losing very fine men in the Senate and the House who no longer even care to carry these burdens with the frustrations
Bill Proxmire,
associated.
Good point. Do you think that all this disclosure is going to keep otherwise good people out of public office?
Absolutely not. I think it's healthy. This is exactly what should have been done long ago. It's incredible to think we've had that House bank, so-called bank, for 100 years. The abuse has been going on for 100 years, year after year. The press has gone to sleep on it. Finally, they awakened, and now they've closed down the bank, but it was about time. I mean, these are real abuses that are taking place. This is waste of the public money. And when the Congress wastes the money, when the President wastes the money the way they do, then it indicates the attitude towards spending is absolutely wrong, and it has to be corrected. We have to get after that, because I can't stress enough, and I'm going to keep hammering away at the fact that we now have a debt of $4 trillion, $200 billion a year in interest we have to pay, growing very fast, and it's absolutely worthless. It doesn't save a human life, doesn't house a single houseless, homeless person, and it's the kind of thing we have to be deeply concerned about and recognize we have to save money anywhere we can. If a company were in this kind of shape, they would do everything they could do, including cutting the pay of the top people, which is what we ought to do here.
Okay, let's go out and find out what the country's thinking about it, and the world. Silver Spring, Maryland. We'll start there. Hello, Silver Spring.
Hi, I was just curious if someone would look at the Constitution, it would be clear that the presidency is in a separate branch from the Congress and the judiciary. Then we have to look upon that as a separate issue and not as 535 members of Congress.
Well, what are you saying, that the president should be treated differently than the Congress should?
Well, in certain respects, because of the number, you have 50,000 people working on the Hill and a certain amount on for the executive branch.
Okay, Bill Proxmire, you want to take a shot at that? Are we being unfair here, or should this be treated separately?
Absolutely not. No, they ought to be treated on the same kind of a standard, the same kind of basis. After all, you have a situation here where the president is the main focus, always has been, rather than any single member of Congress. People personalize their government, and when the president is extravagant, as our presidents have been, and regardless of party for the last 30, 40 years, I think it's perfectly proper for the American people to blow their whistle on it. That's what they're doing.
Bob, let me say something. I think the caller has a point, and the point I think he was trying to make was there are 22,000 staffers up on the both sides of the Hill, and about 1,800 in the executive branch of the White House. That's the old EOB and the new EOB and the White House proper. And that when you're dealing with the President of the United States, you're dealing with the Chief Executive Officer of the United States. And I think we Americans want that man treated properly, equipped properly, transported properly, safely, and in full-time, real-time communication with his government at all times.
I couldn't agree more, but we ought to do it at the lowest possible cost. We aren't doing it. We're spending 10 times as much as we should spend.
Seat in an airline. I travel there, so I know.
I travel that way too.
All right, we're going to take a break. One real-time announcement: Jerry Brown has defeated Bill Clinton in the Vermont caucuses. We'll be back in a moment with more of your phone calls.
Came to rescue you.
Hanging on to the right man is getting tougher all the time.
Do women actually fall for this?
Surprising number, yeah.
But with patience and understanding, a successful relationship can last a lifetime.
After all, in a week, you won't even remember my name.
Can't remember it now. Try and keep up!
From the creator of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Princess Bride, Year of the Comet. This film is not yet rated. At theaters April 24th.
Want to run your windowing software fast? Then you need a real power source inside. A source that can generate the power your software needs. The affordable Intel 486. Power it up and run your software at light speed. Intel, the computer inside.
I was seeing my parents off, and I realized...
Dad, what do you got in here? Gardening equipment?
They've planned their retirement for a long time.
Common sense says the time to plan for your future is today.
One day, it's going to be our turn.
And Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, can help you begin.
Debbie?
One day, Jeff sat down to figure out how much we'll have for retirement.
How's it going, Einstein?
Very funny. Take a look at this.
I thought we were doing a pretty good job. At this rate, we'll never retire.
Over 2 million Americans trust their retirement savings to Fidelity with choices like Magellan Fund. Magellan's approach to stock investing has made it the #1 performing mutual fund for the past 15-year period. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to planning for retirement. You'll also receive everything you need to take your first step. Call 1-800-854-6100. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Welcome back. As we just announced, former Governor Jerry Brown of California has defeated Governor Bill Clinton of Arkansas in the Vermont Democratic caucuses. We're going to go back to the phones now on perks at the White House and on Capitol Hill. And we'll go to Salem, Oregon. Hello, Salem.
Hello, good evening.
Good
well,
evening.
First of all, your last news was good news, but after watching the House Post Office and Civil Service Subcommittee this morning live at 7 o'clock our time, I was really greatly troubled, and the representatives are really having enough trouble handling their own House. They need to get it in order before they even try to shift the focus to the White House. They obviously need help. And my question is, since we out here in Oregon, and I'm sure most of the other states, want nothing more than bipartisan government. We don't want the bickering and the fighting. Why on earth, if Foley and his wife are not able to do the bipartisanship government that we want that would be fair for all the voters, then please, why can't they step down?
Okay, Bill Proxmire, what about?
Well, maybe Foley will step down. I think he's by and large, overall, I think he's been a very good leader. I admire him, but he shouldn't step down, it seems to me, over this particular incident. I don't know of any really damaging thing that affects what his wife has done. Everything I've read is that she's been honest about things. But I think it's a shame when a man of his great ability, and he does have solid ability, should suddenly be wiped out. on the basis of what he's done. Now, let me just say one more thing. He's responsible for closing down the bank. No other leader was. It should have been closed down years ago, but he did it. He did it. He stepped in and stopped it. Now, he didn't make that decision to begin with, and he was pushed by the rank and file. But he was the speaker when this happened.
Bill, let me ask you something. You know a lot about how this operation on Capitol Hill works. There apparently is a criminal investigation into not the bank, but the post office. Apparently the abuse of stamps, selling stamps back.
In order to buy drugs.
Drugs or campaign funds. Do you think that we're going to see people go to jail over this scandal?
Well, if they were selling drugs, they certainly should.
How about members of Congress, though, using campaign dollars to buy stamps and then converting it back into...
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't looked at the law, and I'm not sure whether or not that was an actual violation. It should be a violation. Henceforth, anybody who does that kind of thing should either be fined, go to jail, suffer a substantial penalty.
Okay, let's go to Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Hello, Florida.
Hello there. For Senator Proxmire, I've got a question. Since our president is a chief executive of a very large corporation, when he has state dinners, what should he do? Take them to McDonald's?
No, he shouldn't take them to McDonald's because they'd eat too much fat and get heart attacks. No, I think that the president obviously should be able to entertain, but he doesn't need 96 servants to do that. I've been at the White House a few times in the 30 years I was in the Senate to be entertained, and it seemed to me that the dinners and the whole thing could have been handled with a relatively few number of servants, not 96. And what do they need 5 florists for?
Well, let me ask Al Haag, who's been right there in the middle of it. You're a man, Al, who had enormous power. You could call up a helicopter, airplanes, nothing, not suggesting any impropriety. You didn't fly as much as John Sununu, maybe, but don't you think that these things really can build upon themselves? In other words, you add one perk and then another one gets added on, you don't drop one off, and it has
of course, Bob.
You know?
But let me tell you, demagoguery of the kind associated with this discussion tonight is just hogwash. Every year, the White House, the chief administrator is required to justify every personnel expense, every travel expense, every entertainment expense, and flowers. And I personally want foreign visitors, and there's usually 200 to 300 at a huge banquet where they must be served properly, where they're being measured against how well the French did it or the British are doing it. We want our country to stand tall in the community of nations, and we want to be proud of our White House and our president. And I think we have to be very careful with the demagoguery that is characterizing this debate at the moment in Washington.
I'm sure you're not characterizing Bill Proxmire or me on that as demagogues, but Bill, what about that? Is it getting a little bit out of hand, as General Haig suggested? It is campaign season. A lot of funny things happen in campaign seasons like this.
No, what shocks me is that this criticism should have come long ago. It could have gone against any number of presidents that we've had in the past, and the Congress too. The Congress, the Democratic Congress, they deserve the
annual orgy,
the criticism
every 4 years. And Bill Proxmire used to give an award, which he called the Golden Fleece Award, with much fanfare on the Hill. And I think it did a lot of good, quite frankly. It didn't hurt. And I don't think it hurts to have these annual reviews, but let's be very, very careful about the atmosphere and some of the excessive rhetoric. When you talk about flowers on the White House tables, yes, of course you want flowers, and you want good vases.
You need 5 florists to provide them?
You may indeed. That is a big house.
Paid by the taxpayer?
It's a big house, Bill. And let me tell you, operating it and running it is a big business. It doesn't compare to what we're looking at on both sides of the aisle up in the Congress. But let me tell you, it's a substantial operation and it requires assets.
All right, let's go back to the phone. Severna Park, Maryland. Hello, Maryland. You with us? Severna Park, you there? I guess we lost you. All right, let me go back. This is the debate we're engaging here around this table now. What about, though, the dimensions of this, as Al Haig says, Bill Proxmire, that when you're talking about the White House, and yes, they have 5 floors, and it's sort of easy to pick at that, but the extent, apparent extent of the abuse on Capitol Hill, it doesn't seem to be of equal magnitude.
Oh, I think it's...
Or does it?
Oh, no. I think that there's no question that more money is spent in the executive branch. Of course, you have more people altogether. But nobody on the Hill is spending $180 million on a plane and billing it to the taxpayer. Nobody on the Hill has a Camp David that cost a whale of a lot, and they took a lot of military money just in the last few months, we found out now, to refurbish Camp David. And the costs are extraordinarily high here. This is one man. This isn't 535. Okay. I concede the abuses on the part of the House and Senate, absolutely. But this is mutual. You can't say it.
Okay. Let's go back out to the phones now. Yopon Beach, North Carolina. Are you there?
Yes, indeed.
Go ahead. What's your question?
To General Haag, why are you doing what everyone else in Washington is doing, sweeping the word excess under the carpet?
Okay, Al?
Well, I don't know that I'm doing that. I think I'm as concerned as you are about the need for appropriate efficiency in our government. But I think it's also very important that we not succumb to orgasms of press speculation and finger wagging and the kind of things that are now characterizing this debate in Washington, because mistakes are made in an atmosphere like that. And I don't know whether there was criminality on the Hill in the banking or in the post office, but let's systematically review that and see if it's so, just as we should continue to review all of our expenditures, whether it be for the presidency or for the Congress, and be sure that those funds are justified.
Okay, we're going to take a break and return with more phone calls on Washington Perks. Still to come, Ross Perot's interim running mate.
I was going over my bank statement, and I saw that my rates had never been so low. This is all I'm earning?
Common sense says you can't always depend on yesterday's solutions.
You've got to be kidding.
Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, has the income opportunities you may want.
So we're talking investments.
The interest rates I used to get, they're just not there anymore.
Wondering how safe this one or that one is.
But now you want something solid. Who knows? There's got to be something out there.
Sometimes the answer's a lot closer than you think.
Fidelity offers you high current yields with the credit safety of U.S. government securities, higher than you may be earning in the bank, with no sales charge. That's why over 2 million people trust Fidelity to help their money earn more. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to investing for income. You'll also receive everything you need to start. Call Fidelity now at 1-800-344-8900. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Good times with friends, hey, they're special. Sometimes you wish they would never end. The care you show is just as special. Friends know when to say when.
The family of Budweiser beers is proud of all the friendships they've helped make. So when they remind you to know when to say when, it's all in the name of friendship.
Friends know when to say when.
How widespread is police brutality? And is it a conscious act or a trigger response to a crisis situation? We'll talk about that tomorrow on Sonia Live, 1 p.m. Eastern, only on CNN.
Larry King Live continues, followed by World News after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
Many good comments come my way about Reichardt's advertising. Our advertising is effective, and this, of course, pleases me. But really, it's effective because we live up to all the promises we make. It's just that simple. I believe good advertising can make or break a business. The response to advertising means that a lot of people will find out quickly about the business. And if that business has poor quality merchandise or poor service or breaks its promises, then it goes broke fast. We at Reichardt's keep our promises. That's why we keep our trade, and that's why our advertising is effective. We promise that classic Southwick natural-shouldered men's clothing just doesn't go out of style. We promise anything that you buy at Reichardt's must measure up to your expectations, not ours. We promise courteous and competent personnel, and we promise no sale is ever final. And for almost 40 years, we've kept those promises, and people know it. Yes, we keep all of our promises, and I'll see that we do, because I'm here. I'm Bill Reichert, and I own the store.
This is CNN.
Welcome back. Will voters force Washington's high and mighty to fly coach? I'm Bob Beckel in for Larry King, and we're talking about perks under fire. My guest, former Senator William Proxmire of Wisconsin, and White House veteran General Alexander Haag. In a moment, Admiral James Stockdale. Back to the phones, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Hello, Harrisburg.
Hello, General Haag. My question is for you, and with all due respect, sir, I would like to know how you can even begin to suggest that America could stand tall and should stand tall by serving these outlandish and outrageous dinners at the White House when we have $1 trillion deficit to deal with.
Well, I don't think that's a good comparison, quite frankly. I think we have to hold our own in the international community. We're part of that community. We don't want to be ashamed of America and what it represents in that community, and we have to be proud of it. Now, the problems that we're facing today are not a result of excessive perks. There are problems of a host of other things, such as a lack of cooperation on the Hill in getting our deficit under control with the executive branch. And that seems to me to be the most important order of business today, but we have a host of others. Education, a declining infrastructure in America, the problems of our environment, and above all, the problems of world peace, which is the cause of such celebrations over this last year, and we want to preserve that. Now, these are the real issues facing our country. The other issues should be dealt with, but not with a myopic focus, with a lot of emotion and a lot of what I call tension-leveling accusations on both sides of the political spectrum.
Bill, Bob, we're going to be followed, understand, by General Stockdale. Mm-hmm. Well, let me suggest something to him. Mr. Perot has said that he would abolish all planes for everybody except himself, except the president. The president would continue to have a plane. That doesn't make any sense at all. In other words, the vice president wouldn't have it, the Secretary of State wouldn't have it, the Secretary of Defense wouldn't have a plane, and that's fine. That's absolutely right. But it seems clear to me that for the president himself to insist on having an Air Force One and nobody else is the worst possible kind of an example.
Okay,
a real mistake. I think that's the one mistake maybe Mr. Perot has made. He's made some very good points. He won't get my vote, but he made a good point.
Okay, let's go back. Jimsville, Maryland. Hello. Are you there? Maryland? Okay. There are the airplane issues. Go back to that for a second. Probably not a lot of people would agree, General, with Bill Proxmire, the president shouldn't fly on the planes, but there are 1,200 planes. That's an awful lot of military wing, I guess, are dedicated to the executive branch of government. Do you think maybe at a time like this it might make sense for the president or somebody in the executive branch just to sort of show the colors a little bit, cut back, if for no other reason to say we're giving at least some symbolic gesture here?
Yeah, Bob, it always makes sense every year to review every expenditure that the federal government makes, and that is so in the executive branch. I know, when in State Department, I had to fight for every budget line item we got. I knew when I was working in defense, the same thing, and in the White House as Chief of Staff also. We had to fight and justify every expenditure. That doesn't mean abuses don't creep in. They do.
But nobody stands up to the President of the United States in the executive branch. He's the boss. Nobody's going to say, boss, you shouldn't fly around in that plane.
Bill, I lived in a White House under fire during Watergate, and you believe me, they wanted to charge President Nixon the halfway fare from Chicago, your friends on the Hill.
Well, on the Hill, maybe.
Because he turned over the presidency at noon, just as he was flying over Chicago on his way to California.
The president...
that's petty nonsense, and it should have been
The problem now
on.
is you don't get enough criticism of this kind from the Hill, and you get absolutely none from the executive branch.
Okay, let me, for those of you who may have just tuned in to us, I want to announce again that former Governor Jerry Brown of California has defeated Governor Bill Clinton of Arkansas in the Vermont caucuses. A little politics before we go, both of you. What do you think about Jerry Brown, Bill Proxmire?
Well, I'm a Clinton man all the way. I think he'd be a wonderful president of the United States, and I think he's going to make it.
General, you must be sitting back as a Republican watching this whole Democratic side with some interest.
Yes, and I'm appalled at what we've come up with on both candidates, and I think there's a lot to be done within the Democratic Party to put a viable candidate forward.
Okay, let me ask you as we wrap up about H. Ross Perot. Interesting fellow. Probably will run as an independent. We're going to interview his vice presidential candidate. Will he have an impact, Bill Proxmire?
Well, he'll have an impact, but I think it's hard to tell. I think it could be just as much of an effect, an adverse effect on the Democrats and the Republicans. Most people think that Bush will be hurt, but I think it could be very well be either one.
Al Haag?
I think both will be hurt. I think Ross's basic policies are somewhat more liberal than are evident right now, and it's going to ultimately hurt the Democrats a little more. But I don't think it's going to succeed, even though he's a very dear and close old friend that I respect immensely.
A spirited debate. We're out of time. I want to thank my guests, General Alexander Haig and former Senator William Proxmire. Coming next, the retired admiral who's about to sail into presidential politics as first mate to H. Ross Perot. Don't go away.
Coming up, H. Ross Perot's independent White House campaign attracts a bona fide war hero.
The real problem with heartburn isn't putting it out, it's keeping it out. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. It doesn't just stop the burning, it actually helps keep it from coming back. New Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. It could start in your office, in your home, over lunch. But now, wherever heartburn starts, this is where it ends. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. No ordinary antacid works like this one to put out heartburn.
Where can you use the Players Club card? Las Vegas, Atlantic City, the Caribbean, on cruise ships. Sometimes you just need to get away from it, all right? But these days, you gotta be smart about it. With a Players Club card, you save 50% off your room, 25% off food and drinks, up to 50% off shows. The Players Club card. Have some fun the smart way.
New members get 2 free nights in Las Vegas or Atlantic City when the club books their flights. Call toll-free right now. There's no obligation.
Headline News, I'm Chuck Roberts.
Baltic leaders are already working.
From the NCAA basketball.
When you need the latest news, business, and sports, updated every 30 minutes around the clock, you need CNN Headline News. Anytime, all the time.
I've talked to a lot of people that say, even in their 80s and 90s, I still feel like a 16-year-old girl inside.
There is a new attitude in America about aging.
Some have called it a revolution in this country that's going to happen as a result of an aging population.
They're trying to affect change and not just accept what happens to them.
Now, a news program brings you new ideas about getting older.
What is middle age?
Something I have yet to experience.
Right.
Early Prime with Lou Waters and Cheryl Atkinson, weekdays at 4 on CNN.
He was the highest-ranking naval POW of the Vietnam War, tortured for 8 years by his captors. He's got 10 honorary doctorates in law and philosophy, but maybe nothing prepares you to be thrust into the center of a burgeoning presidential campaign. That's where Admiral James Stockdale finds himself today, 72 hours after H. Ross Perot asked him to serve as his interim running mate so he can get on the ballot in all 50 states. Stockdale said yes and instantly became a player in this year's most intriguing game of What If. Admiral Stockdale joins us from San Francisco. Admiral, welcome. Where were you when you got this call, and what was your reaction?
I was in my campus condo on the Stanford campus doing my own breakfast dishes on a last Saturday morning. My wife, Sybil, being out in Pennsylvania with our son and one of our sons and his family. And the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was my old friend Ross, who said, I've got a favor to ask of you, and would you be my stand-in running mate so I can get these petitions filed in the states that require certification of both the presidential and vice presidential candidate. There are over half the states are in that category. And he said, I don't want this to interfere with our friendship. And I took me a second to say, of course I'd do that, Ross. And that's the only deal we've made, that I'm to be there until he picks his running mate for the November election, should the process of getting the petitions allows him to be on the ballot in all 50 states.
Admiral, did you get to your wife and the rest of your family before they heard about it in the press? And what's their response, by the way?
Somehow I'm usually in almost all cases, I think first of what Sybil would think, and I go to her. But in this case, it seemed almost harmless here to help a friend out for a few months. Now I'm realizing that we were already boosters of Ross's idea of the petitions. Sybil and I have known him for 20 years, and I had been in touch with him the previous week about how I could help him with the petition program. So I knew she was. We'd already said this is worth our devoting a lot of time and some of our own money to get this good friend of ours who we admire so much on the ballot and hopefully into the White House. So I didn't have to check with her, and I don't think the boys, our 4 sons, expected me to check with them, but they're delighted.
Admiral, if I'm not mistaken, you are a Republican and supported President Bush in his election in 1988. Have you heard from any of your Republican friends who are suggesting this might not be such a good idea?
I hear not from so much from my old friends as from people that converse on the Stanford campus, and some political scientists have asked me, actions like yours have consequences. Don't you think that it might just take votes away from your friend Bush and an entirely different set of people would show up as winners? And we had talked about that, Sybil and I, and we understand that. But we said to ourselves, this is worth the risk.
Okay, Admiral, I'd one wrap-up question around that. You haven't heard from anybody from the White House or the Bush re-election committee, I tell you?
No.
Okay. Tell me what you think is the reason for, at least initially, this apparent enthusiasm developing at the grassroots level around H. Ross Perot's campaign. I mean, in fact, not many people in this country knew Ross Perot beyond being a name as a major capitalist. What do you think it's all about?
Well, he's a very dynamic person, as Al Haag would probably agree with me on. He's kind of one of a kind, and he's got both common sense and intelligence, a rare combination in many cases. And he knows human nature, and he makes appeals to people's hearts. He wants to make this petition committee a spontaneous activity. He doesn't. Some people find it odd that he is standing aloof, but that he wants to go to the White House as the servant of the people. He thinks the government should serve the people, and he says if they will, of their own will, organize themselves. He doesn't want it programmed or orchestrated. He said that on this program. I read the transcript coming up in the car. I'm trying to catch up on what he said. That he would, I think it's an honest position that he would like to be told that he is wanted by the people, and if they do want him, then he will serve and vigorously pursue their problems.
Okay, Admiral, let's go out and talk to the people. Springfield, Virginia. Hello, Springfield.
Hello. Hi, how y'all doing tonight?
Fine. You had a question for Admiral?
Yes, I do. How can Ross Perot run the country with business background in mind, when governments tend to be run through persuasion and not rather like one man at the top, like a CEO runs a country, can run a company the way one would run a country?
Yes. But I think Perot's leadership style is very compatible with running a country. If you knew the EDS crowd, when he was in his peak there before he went to General Motors. There was a loyalty, a camaraderie, a pride that he had brought about that was almost like patriotism. He's demonstrated competence in many fields besides manufacturing.
Okay, Admiral, we're going to take a break. We'll be back to take your phone calls for H. Ross Perot's interim running mate, Admiral James Stockdale. I'm Bob Beckel in Washington. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm David French in Washington. Coming up on World News, it's Libya's turn to feel the sting of a tough United Nations resolution. Also, more hopeful signs on the economy. And Mike Tyson must remain behind bars while his rape conviction is appealed. Those stories and more at the top of the hour, and Bob Beckel will be back after this.
I was going over my bank statement, and I saw that my rates had never been so low. This is all I'm earning?
Common sense says you can't always depend on yesterday's solutions.
You've got to be kidding.
Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, has the income opportunities you may want.
So we're talking investments.
The interest rates I used to get, they're just not there anymore.
Wondering how safe this one or that one is.
But now you want something solid. Who knows? There's got to be something out there.
Sometimes the answer's a lot closer than you think.
Fidelity offers you high current yields with the credit safety of U.S. government securities, higher than you may be earning in the bank, with no sales charge. That's why over 2 million people trust Fidelity to help their money earn more. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to investing for income. You'll also receive everything you need to start. Call Fidelity now at 1-800-344-8900. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Good times with friends, hey, they're special. Sometimes you wish they would never end. The care you show is just as special. Friends know when to say when.
The family of Budweiser beers is proud of all the friendships they've helped make. So when they remind you to know when to say when, it's all in the name of friendship.
Friends know when to say when.
Well, we want to be together, but not too close together.
Yeah, she's never seen the beach. And she wants to see every mile of it.
For the way you travel today more than ever, the Smart Money is on budget. Now at Budget, get a Lincoln or minivan with unlimited mileage for just $199 per week. The Smart Money is on budget.
Welcome back. We're here with Admiral James Stockdale, who's allied himself with H. Ross Perot's independent presidential movement. We'll go back to the phones to Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, Indianapolis.
Hello there. Glad to have you on the show tonight. I have a question about the fact that Mr. Perot has required to have named a vice president before he can even be on a ballot in some states. To me, this sounds, if not at least, the most undemocratic thing I've ever heard, possibly even unconstitutional.
Admiral? Well, it's the state, I don't know how it got in there, but certain states require it and some don't.
Admiral, you've been asked to be H. Ross Perot's interim vice presidential candidate until he says if he does run for president, he will choose a vice president sometime around the conventions of the two parties this summer. If he were to ask you to continue on, would you run for vice president in the fall?
I don't want to talk about that because that's not part of our deal. I went into it with him as an interim to during the time he was tooling up, and don't certainly have my heart set on it, and there's been no reason to believe that was part of the deal, and I'm not secretly seeking anything.
Okay, let's go back out to Indianapolis, the second Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, Indianapolis.
Hello. Okay, I read in USA Today this morning, they said that Mr. Perot wanted to cut the military budget to zero. And how does he plan to defend the country if he's going to do that?
Well, I think, I've been reading. I think I know where that came from. And at least he said something like that in a humorous vein at the National Press Club. I'm sure he doesn't mean that literally. He says a lot of things that can be taken out of context, like we all do. Senator Proxmire wondered how he could fly around in Air Force One and nobody else in the government do it. Well, I'm sure that came out of that press conference speech when he was, again, lightheartedly saying that nobody should have an airplane, and then he kind of threw in as an afterthought, unless it was the president, and then he the plane he named, I wrote it down, it was the Gulfstream. Now, the Gulfstream is a propeller-driven, little light two-engine airplane that is nothing like Air Force One. So I think you're talking about quotations that were made in the nature of humor.
Admiral, though humorous or not, though, this presidential business is a pretty tough business, as Bill Clinton has found out. Do you expect now that both Ross Perot and yourself will come under quite intense scrutiny, your backgrounds, your financial records, etc.?
Oh, why not? I mean, once we're in the hat, I would expect to be treated like everybody else.
Okay, fine. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a moment with more from Admiral James Stockdale, H. Ross Perot's interim running mate. Don't go away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kara McGinnis at the CNN Center in Atlanta. Larry King Live will continue in just a few minutes. And for this evening, some big thunderstorms rumbling around the Great Plains, primarily across western Texas. We'll have an update on CNN's World News coming up after Larry King Live. High temperatures Wednesday afternoon. Los Angeles, you've got a 40% of just widely scattered showers. However, in San Diego, already half an inch of rainfall has materialized there. Phoenix, some scattered rain showers as well, 74 degrees, 43 in Denver. We've got some Arctic air, which is going to move down and actually plunge down across the southeast. Cooler temperatures for Dallas, only about 53 degrees. Snow for Chicago, and 34. And if you're traveling to New York City, look for an afternoon high temperature with cloudy skies of 52 degrees. On the backside of that area of low pressure, look for snowfall for the Great Lakes and the eastern Great Lakes and northern New England. Now, these forecasts coming up to these cities.
Saab convertibles hail from Sweden, whose northernmost reaches lie within the Arctic Circle. Which is why Saabs are rugged, sure-footed on all surfaces, and provide a large weatherproof sanctuary with a driver's side airbag and anti-lock brakes. Which makes Saab one convertible that won't be under the weather, no matter what weather it's under.
In medical tests, people fell asleep faster and slept better with Unisom than without.
Now I'm sleeping and sleeping.
Unisom for faster, better sleep.
Nighttime, one of the worst times for pain. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay with added power. It's the strongest Bengay ever. Fast relief from muscle aches and minor arthritis pain. With new Ultra Strength Bengay, you can say goodnight to your pain.
Big odors lurk in small places.
Stick it to 'em with stick-ups.
Big odors linger in small places.
Stick it to 'em with stick-ups.
Concentrated Airwick Stick-Ups stop big odors in small places. Airwick Stick-Ups.
Stick it to 'em.
Add a filet, Ray.
Now, buy any meal at Long John Silver's and add a piece. Fish for 75 cents, chicken for 65, or shrimp for 35.
Animal, Paul! Go Bears! Long John Silver's!
Tonight on Sports Tonight, will former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson await his appeal behind bars or in open air? And what about Michael Jordan and his alleged connection with gambling? What does the NBA have to say? Nick Charles and I talk about it tonight at 11 Eastern.
For a transcript of Larry King Live, send $5 to Larry King Live Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203. Or call 303-831-9000.
Back now for our remaining moments with Admiral James Stockdale, whose name may soon appear on an independent presidential ticket with Texas businessman H. Ross Perot. Let's go back to the phones. Durwood, Maryland. Hello, Durwood.
Yes, hello. Admiral, you said that Mr. Perot's leadership in business almost evoked a following, something like patriotism. Such a charismatic powerhouse at the helm of the country scares me. Do you think that this could possibly be dangerous?
I know what you mean, but I don't think he's as dangerous charismatic. He's a persuasive man who wants to serve his country and wants the people to be proud of it. He is no demagogue.
Admiral, Ross Perot has been obviously a successful businessman. And as a successful businessman, he's able to make very quick decisions on his own. He did direct his company to quite a successful venture. Now he's got a deal, if he becomes president, with 535 members of Congress and unwieldy executive branch. Do you think his style of leadership may just not work here? Or in Washington, rather?
I think with the government gridlocked and the debt eating us alive, we should try something else. And I don't think he's going to be an autocratic guy that's flying off the handle. He'll figure out a way to get action out of a cooperative Congress once they understand that his directness and his honesty. And I don't think what we have, the moss that's on the back of our system, justifies leaving it there just because it used to be there. I think it's time to make a change, a break with tradition, so we can survive as a country. The predictions of the economic predictions that I read are that we can't last too much longer as the debt piles up.
Speaking about change, Admiral, your life is about to change quite a bit. Do you expect to go out and start campaigning now for Ross Perot?
I haven't programmed that. We haven't talked about that, and I am not into the issues with him yet. And it'll all depend on when and how he picks the final running mate.
Okay.
I think about all I'm going to do now is, and this is my idea, is monitor this petition committee work and make sure that those people are getting what help they need to serve on their own without being programmed. Nobody's getting a nickel.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. I'd like to thank my guest, Admiral James Stockdale. I'm Bob Beckel in Washington. Larry King will be back at this microphone tomorrow night. Have a good evening and take care.
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. Next on World News, members of Congress aren't the only politicians with perks. Now embattled Democrats try to switch the ethics focus to the White House. The police officer accused of beating Rodney King the most explains what he did and why. And the latest in the saga of the white whale in the Black Sea. World News is next.
Coming up, World News, followed by Sports Tonight, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
This new family meal thing.
Someday you'll be glad we spent more time together.
When I was your age,
I felt the same way.
maybe we should make this a weekly thing, just the three of us.
No heels.
This is our family.
She's getting too used to the babysitter. I think she thought it was her mother.
I spent more time with the babysitters.
Hi there. Hi.
Hi. Bye. Okay, now let me do it.
It's really good fun, isn't it?
I know.
But those family reunions are great fun.